Hey, so in this video, we're going to talk about the causes of glossophobia. We're going to talk about what causes public speaking fear, because if you understand what the causes are, you're more likely to come up with a real solution to that problem. Hey, this is Doug Standard with Fearless Presentations, the fastest, easiest ways to eliminate public speaking fear. So what actually causes glossophobia? What causes public speaking fear? And in some situations, what causes that fear to get so dramatic that it becomes a phobia and keeps us from actually speaking in front of groups? Well, there are a number of different things that I've kind of found being a public speaking coach for the last 20 plus years or so. The very first thing, and this is really the most common, is actually not a normal kind of cause that you would think of. It's basically just lack of practice or lack of experience. If you think about most skill sets that people experience where in the beginning we're really nervous about doing these things, but later on we get way more comfortable. Things like learn to drive a car when you're 15, 16 years old, or when you're 4, 5, 6 years old and you're learning to ride a bicycle. Those are things that when we start the process, we're going to be very nervous. But over time, after a series of successes, we tend to get more comfortable with those things. The thing that's really different about public speaking versus riding a bicycle or driving a car is that we just do it so infrequently that it's really hard to get that series of successes. So think about it, if you were 4, 5, 6 years old and you practiced riding a bicycle once and then you didn't practice again for another year and a half, there's a good chance that in between that time, that nervousness is going to increase pretty dramatically. And that's really what happens with public speaking fear, is that we just do it so infrequently that it causes the nervousness. The nervousness never really gets a chance to diminish. That's one of the reasons why we have such great successes with our public speaking classes, is that people can actually come into a controlled environment, get a series of successes in a very short period of time, and really increase their confidence. So it works really, really well. In addition to the lack of experience though, there are a few things that I've kind of identified that cause that fear to become more of a phobia. One would be a past bad experience. And sometimes that past bad experience is so traumatic or dramatic that it kind of sticks with us. And it might be, 2 weeks ago I was giving a presentation in front of my boss or my coworkers, and things just didn't go as well as what I wanted to, and so I just want to fix it. I mean, that's kind of the low extreme. On the high extreme though, sometimes I find that an experience occurred at some time in somebody's career and somebody's life that was so memorable and so embarrassing that they never wanted to experience that thing again. That's where that fear kind of turns into a phobia. So if it was a single past experience, that's really easy to fix, because if when we're getting in front of a group we just have that single experience that we have to overcome, then a series of successes can really fix that. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of times when folks go through a coach or they go through a toasting club or they go through a class, they can get great benefit if that's the cause. The second cause is a little bit more difficult. It's having what I call low self-confidence or low self-esteem. In a lot of situations, this is actually caused by well-meaning coworkers, managers, bosses, spouses, parents, people that are trying to actually help us, but in reality, they're actually causing that nervousness. What sometimes people will do is they want to give us those tips. They see that we're kind of struggling, and so they want to give us some tips that can help us. This happened to me, by the way. When I was in college, I started a public speaking class in college, and I was fairly comfortable. I didn't think of myself as being a nervous speaker. And actually, when I gave my first presentation, I got a 94 on it, which was an A. It was pretty good, one of the best in the class. What happened though was that instructor that was teaching the class, she wanted to critique us. She wanted to tell us things that we could improve on. And so the next time I gave a presentation, 3 or 4 weeks later, I was focusing more on the critiques. I was focusing more on fixing the things that I did wrong. And I actually ended up getting an 84 on that presentation. So I actually got worse. I got a worse grade on the second one. The third time I gave a presentation, 3 or 4 weeks later, I got a 74. So I ended up making a B in a class. But the key thing to keep in mind about that is that in my head, what I was experiencing was every single time that I got up to give a presentation, I got worse. And so my confidence was diminished every single time. And that happens to a lot of us when we stand up to speak, is that if we can't string together a series of positive successes, it makes it much more difficult for us to reduce that fear, reduce that nervousness, and that's where that fear can really move into a phobia. The third cause that we've kind of figured out is some type of past unresolved trauma. There's been something that happened to us at some time in the past that was very traumatic. Now, this could be a time speaking in front of a group, which is what I spoke of before, but it might be something totally different. Let me give you an example. I had a woman come through my class years ago who didn't really see herself as having a fear of public speaking, although she avoided public speaking like the plague. And the reason why was because when she was 4 years old, 5 years old, she was in a recital. She was in a singing recital. She got on stage, her voice cracked, and all she remembers about that situation was that there were little kids in the front row that were laughing at her. And so she ran off the stage, never to be on stage again. That's something that if it happens at an early age, it can really kind of stick with us. And I hear about things like that all the time in our public speaking classes, whether it's a singing recital or some play that we were in when we were kids, or it could be the time that the math teacher made us stand up in front of the room and do an arithmetic problem on the board. Every single one of those situations can actually lead to public speaking fear that can turn into a phobia if we don't address that cause at some time in our life. The last cause that's pretty common is a fear of loss. It's that if we stand up and speak in front of this group, we have a fear that we're going to lose something precious. An example of this might be, let's say I'm a salesperson and I've got this big, huge contract that's on the line. And if I have to stand up in front of the buyers and give that presentation, knowing that if I do a crummy job, I lose this big contract, it may make me really, really nervous. It may make that nervousness kind of jump up. When situations like this occur where the fear of loss is greater than our want to succeed, can really cause that nervousness to move into a phobia. So those are some of the major causes that I've seen anyway of this phobia, of glossophobia. And if you understand which one of those that you're dealing with, it can really help you come up with a better solution. So stay tuned for the next video in the series, because we're going to tackle some of the solutions to these causes. Hey, make sure and subscribe to the channel, and if you have a comment about other types of causes that I didn't address, make sure and leave it in the comments below.